His goals are ambitious.
I advocate that let's have poor people get energy, 1.3 billion of them who have no electricity at all.
He knows this firsthand, growing up in Sierra Leone, studying by candlelight. Now, as Director General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, he wants no one on the planet to be left in the dark. An energy revolution.
An energy revolution. If we're going to lift 8 billion people by 2025, 2030, you need energy access. Inclusive development, inclusive growth, and general prosperity for all.
Outspoken, out to prove there are smarter energy strategies that can benefit all nations.
Whether in California, in Singapore, or in London, you can change how you use and generate energy without really significantly sacrificing your quality of life.
This week on African Voices, the passionate and influential Dr. Kandeh Yumkella, a world leader on energy.
It's been a unique and exciting opportunity. I couldn't find a better job.
Kandeh Yumkella is a well-known figure in the energy world. He was appointed Director General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in 2005. Now, in his second and final term, Yumkella is aggressively going after what he believes will help fight poverty and strengthen nations: universal energy access, electricity for all by the year 2030. He travels the globe encouraging world leaders and other highly influential people to join him to fight and install cleaner, renewable alternatives that enhance energy production, that are better for the environment. To say the least, he's been busy. One of your big topics has been energy access to end energy poverty. Talk to me a little about that.
Well, we are convinced that without energy, access to energy, you cannot achieve the Millennium Development Goals. I know from my experience, growing up in Sierra Leone, going back there today, that if you don't have access to energy, you can't talk about closing the digital divide, getting internet available to people. You cannot talk about getting manufacturing done. Who is going to invest in a country in manufacturing, which they need for jobs, if you don't have a regular energy supply? But we also know that a number of the Millennium Development Goals cannot be achieved if people don't have access to energy. To get clean water available regularly, I'm not saying feel-good projects, to get it available for a mass population, you need an energy source to pump that water, to clean that water, to recycle the water. You need energy in villages to store vaccines so you can do immunization. The Secretary General calls energy the golden thread that runs through all the development pillars. In fact, 60 to 70% of the greenhouse gases that are causing climate change come from energy systems. So if you want to fix climate change, you need an energy revolution.
So you're telling me, though, that for all the people out there who don't have electricity, who don't have energy, you're telling me that by 2030, you see it possible to eliminate energy poverty around the world?
We believe it's doable. We have the best minds working on this.
Wow.
Our friends from the United Nations, friends from the World Bank, the International Energy Agency. We feel very excited because we just got a big boost in Rio. Support from over 50 developing countries stepped forward, wanting to be part of this initiative. The challenge now, we got billions of dollars of pledges. How do you convert pledges to real action on the ground over the next 10 years? Can we hold ourselves and countries and businesses accountable that what they pledged, they really meant to do?
I want you to explain the link, the connection between ending poverty and energy.
For me, that's our role in the UN, to make that connection, to see the possibilities for transformative change that spreads prosperity for all. If we don't do it, and we become 9 billion, and 1/3 of mankind is still poor, but yet we've taken all their raw materials to be prosperous, there will be insecurity around the world.
Do you think people get it? You travel around the world. Do people get it?
Locally, people get it, There's not a single community, not a single country in this world that does not want an energy source. Not a single one. Show me somebody who wants to live in darkness, go to bed at 7 o'clock, as they do in my village and other places, because there is no electricity. The point is, it's the politics of energy. It is related to also access to supply sources, the politics of oil and gas, the politics of competitiveness of industries. So simple issues, for example, energy efficiency in manufacturing, become very sensitive. And that's why we at UNIDO, my organization, we are helping countries develop production systems that use less energy, use less water, but they still remain competitive.
How do you change the old way of doing business? How do you get companies to look at new ways?
The good news is many companies see today that it is good for their bottom line when they save on energy use or water use. However, the scale we need is not there because governments are still slow to act. We see some mayors acting at the subnational level, governors acting because they know it's good for the national, for their own local budget. But at the macro level, government level, there is some resistance. But we see countries, we see China making a lot of efforts. They're leaders in renewables, in many renewable energy technologies. We see Brazil. They plan already $280 billion in investments in transforming the Brazilian energy infrastructure over the next 20 years. We see the European Union, they have set targets, 2020, to transform their energy systems. So there is movement, but we need it in all countries around the world.
Dr. Yumkella, talk to me about the frustrations that you have, specifically when it comes to finance.
The frustration, the frustration is that because of sometimes narrow political interests, you see people knowing what to do, believing in what to do, but for the sake of short-term political gain, because they have to stand for election in 4 years, they decide not to support a cause.
So a short-sightedness?
We call it in global governance short-termism. They have to think about elections in 2 years or 4 years. So you are trying to talk to them about transformative change for 10 years, and they're like, okay, yeah, right, but I have elections coming up next year. I need to talk about populist topics now. It's the same with development cooperation. We see, for example, in the context of Africa, people talk a lot about poverty reduction, but they don't want to talk about wealth creation in Africa. But you have to create wealth in Africa. You have to help those economies move into the industrial age. If African population is going to be 1.3 billion by 2030, 2 billion almost by 2050, most of those people living in the cities, you must talk about wealth creation. You must talk about manufacturing to transform those economies. Otherwise there will be crisis. Where will they find jobs? People forget that this so-called Arab Spring Revolution started in North Africa. That's Africa. It was about youth demanding jobs. Yes, there was governance issues, but at the end of the day, it was about jobs and prosperity and lack of hope. The rest of sub-Saharan Africa need that change. But people rather talk about poverty alleviation, saving the poor people in Africa, than talking about a true partnership with Africa to transform those economies. That's politics. That's an old paradigm of development in Africa as a receiver, a poor nation, save their souls. No, it is about partnerships. It's about making Africa a viable entity in a 21st century global economy. That's the issue. Politicians will talk about poverty because it's a little bit more sexy.
Yumkella's voice is being heard. So far, businesses and governments have pledged more than $50 billion toward the UN's Sustainable Energy for All initiative. His success as a leader comes from first-hand experiences of privilege and poverty.
My father made me know who I was, what I am, my own values, and the fact that I can be anything I want to be.